Hey guys, alright, today's video will be another tropical update, and honestly, I gotta say, I'm sure you guys are probably a good bit tired of all these tropical updates, because we have had so many this year, since this year's hurricane season has just been so active, it's been crazy. But today's tropical update is probably one of the more important ones, honestly, of the year, because we have two tropical storms in the Atlantic Basin right now, both pretty close to one another. Both are in the close to the U.S. Gamma is in the southern Gulf of Mexico, right north of the Yucatan Peninsula, and is a weakening tropical storm on its way to being dissipating. Delta, on the other hand, is doing the exact opposite. It is strengthening quite rapidly right now, and in fact, just over the past 6 hours, but especially between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., it really started strengthening to the point where at 11 a.m. it was a 45 mile per hour tropical storm, and then 2 p.m. the 2 p.m. advisory came in, and Delta went up to being a 60 mile per hour tropical storm, and now its pressure is down to 998 millibars, and it's moving directly west at 7 miles per hour, and it's in fact moving farther towards the west and farther to the south of where the forecast cone is showing it, forecast track is showing it go, than anticipated. So that's a very, very interesting thing to take note of. And in fact, this video will be really just mainly me talking about Delta, because this storm is really the most important system to be talking about right now. I don't know. Here's a track. This is the 2 p.m. This is the forecast track from the NHC, the newest track from the 11 a.m. advisory. This is the 2 p.m. advisory showing the more updated intensity of Delta at 60 miles per hour, yeah, and moving to the west at 7 miles per hour. Now, I don't know if you guys can really see it that well there, but let me just, if I zoom in a little bit closer, you can see that's the X in the orange area. That's where the center of the system is. You can see the track starts to shift it more towards the north and then curve it back towards the northwest through this gap between the Yucatan and Cuba. That's called shooting the gap, and that would really help Delta. Not with no Atlantic interaction, that would really help Delta stay over warm waters and have a better chance of becoming a stronger system. But it seems like at the 5 p.m. advisory, I think the track will have to shift a little bit farther towards the west, towards the west, honestly, yeah. And honestly, we'll have to see when the NHC thinks now the system will start to curve back towards the north and west and start to move towards the Gulf and between the gap between the Yucatan and Cuba and into the Gulf of Mexico. So that is really something we're going to have to watch very, very closely, because if it does indeed go in between the Yucatan and Cuba and doesn't really interact with either land area that much, it will be able to honestly strengthen as much as it wants to, because the sea surface temperatures in the Western Caribbean and especially the Southern and Central Gulf alone are extremely warm, and just probably the thing that really has been able to sustain the tropical systems that we've seen all year, even though a lot of them have been battling lots of strong wind shear and dry air. This system, on the other hand, it has all the warm sea surface temperatures to really fuel off of, but then also the dry air and wind shear are really backed off. There's really none in its path, at least for the next 2 days, in fact. So it has a whole 2 days between now and Wednesday night where it can honestly just strengthen as much as it wants to. There's really nothing holding it back, unless it somehow really entangles with some part of western Cuba or the northern tip of the Yucatan or something, and that really disrupts it somehow. But honestly, otherwise, it really will be able to strengthen as much as it wants. This is a scary system, honestly. This might be one of the scarier systems we've seen all year, other than Laura. So, yeah, that's what the NHC is showing right now for the forecast cone for Delta. Just for the heck of it, I'll show you the forecast is, as of right now, the forecast is tropical storm force wind speed probabilities, and you can see Cuba, the Yucatan pretty much have generally a guaranteed chance of seeing tropical storm force winds, probably more in gusts, maybe some areas seeing sustained tropical storm force winds. But then, as well, you see the Gulf Coast, especially Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, have upwards of a 50% chance of tropical storm force winds. So, they will likely see, and in fact, Louisiana is the prime state right now along the U.S. Gulf Coast to see the brunt and the full force of Delta potentially when it makes landfall on the U.S. Gulf Coast as of right now. So, people living in Louisiana, especially in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lake Charles, those areas, even Mobile, Gulfport, those areas, all of those areas, people living in those areas, please make sure you are as prepared as possible for the system, because the system could really be a very, very major system for you guys. So please take any precautions as necessary. Please do not take this lightly whatsoever, because even if the system comes in slightly weaker than its peak intensity, it will still bring all of that force of its peak intensity on shore as it's making landfall. Because let's say it does peak, as of right now, the peak intensity is a strong Cat 2, almost Cat 3. So let's say it peaks at around 105, 110 mile per hour Cat 2, weakens and makes landfall as a strong Cat 1. It will still bring all the force of a strong Cat 2 on shore with the storm surge, especially the storm surge and even the wind as well, honestly, all of that combined. So please do not take this lightly, and please take any precautionary needs necessary to prepare yourself for the system. Now let's show you the arrival time for tropical storm force winds, and you can see that for Cuba, the Yucatan, they'll likely start to see tropical storm force winds tomorrow morning around 8, 9 a.m., generally throughout the day into the evening. And then for the Gulf Coast, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Panhandle, as of right now, it looks like Thursday morning around 8 a.m., 9 a.m. for those areas for the earliest reasonable arrival time for tropical storm force winds. So about another 2 3/4 days left or so, something like that, for you guys to prepare yourself for Delta before the winds really start to pick up as of right now, as a forecast for right now from Delta for you guys there along the Gulf Coast. Okay, now let's go to tropical tidbits, and before we get into the models, of course, I want to show you what Delta looks like on the satellite imagery, and then, of course, what the hurricane ensemble model track guidance is showing, and the intensity model track guidance is showing for Delta. Now, first, the satellite imagery for Delta, you can see it is really looking like a nicely formed tropical system. Very nice amounts of vorticity spin to it, lots of great convection around the center there. Looking very healthy, and will continue to be so and be this way all throughout the rest of today, through tomorrow, and even through Wednesday, honestly, I gotta say. So things are not looking bright for the potential of the Gulf Coast seeing any minor impacts whatsoever from the system. It looks like the impacts from this system for the Gulf Coast, honestly, will likely be moderate to even major impacts, I gotta say. So please, again, people living along the Gulf Coast, especially Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, please make sure you are as prepared as possible for the system. And here's the hurricane model ensemble track guidance. And you can see all of the models. This is very concerning that all of the models here are in great agreement of where the system will go. To the northwest, shooting the gap between the Yucatan and Cuba, going towards the northwest through the Gulf, and then curving north because a front will kind of pick it up and curve it more towards the north and in towards Louisiana, Mississippi coastline into the Gulf Coast. And yeah, you can see all of the models really compacted to where it will likely make landfall, honestly, in southeastern Louisiana. So southeastern Louisiana, honestly, you guys, New Orleans, please make sure you are extremely prepared for this system. Now, I'll show you the Gfs ensemble model track guidance and Gps ensemble model track guidance, because both of them as well, honestly, are in great agreement with the hurricane ensemble model track guidance, that they are all very packed together and show that the system will likely continue towards the northwest, shoot the gap between the Cuba and the Yucatan, and then curve north in towards Louisiana, and become a very powerful system as well, by the way, making landfall in Louisiana somewhere. So again, Louisiana could see a pretty powerful impact. The Gps ensemble model track guidance, in fact, this is very surprising, showing you this map, honestly, because it's a lot more concise on where the system will likely go, honestly, from what we've seen before with what this graph has shown for previous tropical systems this year, where it's showing likely that it will, most models are showing that it will likely make landfall along the U.S. Gulf Coast and southeastern Louisiana, Mississippi area. So there is that, and then of course here is the major thing that I really wanted to, most major thing that I really want to show you guys here, the intensity model guidance forecast as of right now. You can see it is, as of right now, Delta is a strong tropical storm, and pretty much all of the models take it into hurricane status. Majority of the models take it to Category 2, Category 3 status, and a few of them even get it into Category 4 status. So again, major hurricane status for Delta is definitely not out of the question. In fact, I gotta tell you, not to be at all dramatic or crazy about this system, but I think there is a good likelihood, way better likelihood for the system than any previous system we saw happen, even when Laura was happening as well, that this system has a much better chance to get to Category 5 status. I think that there is a much more decent likelihood that Delta does become a Category 5 hurricane if it's able to really tap into its prime conditions over the next at least 2 days. So honestly, I definitely think it will become at least a Category 2 or Category 3 hurricane, but I would not be surprised whatsoever if it gets to Category 4 or even 5 status. So please, people living along the U.S. Gulf Coast, especially Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, please make sure you are as prepared as possible for this system. It is truly just fascinating system to track, very dangerous system. Honestly, I really fear for, honestly, what's ahead with the system and what impacts it could really pose to the Gulf Coast. The storm surge forecast alone I'm extremely fearful of, because potentially of how strong this storm gets, it could bring, if I were to guess as of right now, potentially storm surge amounts of up to, I would say, honestly, potentially 20 plus feet of storm surge is not out of the question, especially because of the fact that the shelf of the Gulf, especially getting closer towards the Gulf Coast coastline, gets a lot shallower, so all that water gets pushed up even higher from that point. So that is a really, really major thing to take into account. Alright, now let's get into what the GFS and CMC models are showing for Delta, and then I'll show you what the European model is showing for Delta on Pivotal Weather's website. So first we're looking at the GFS model, and then, so here's the GFS model, and you can see it shows Delta really wrapping up and getting very, very strong as it shoots the gap between the Yucatan and Cuba into the Gulf, and really becomes a very, very powerful system, getting down to 959 millibars, and then weakening a little bit as it starts to make landfall along the southeastern Louisiana coast to the west of New Orleans, which, by the way, for those of you who may not know, the eastern side of a tropical system, especially a stronger tropical system making landfall, the eastern side of that tropical system is where the strongest and worst impacts are. So let's say this occurs and Delta makes landfall to the west of New Orleans. The worst of the storm surge and winds and rain will all be rotating into New Orleans and pushed into New Orleans and into that area. So New Orleans, if this does occur, New Orleans, you could see lots of flooding issues. Really, honestly, you could see very, very bad flooding issues with this storm if this were to pan out this way. So that's what the GFS is showing. Very, very concerning look, truly. Here's the CMC model, showing you what the CMC model is forecasting as of right now for Delta. You can see, again, it's also showing it shooting the gap between the Yucatan and Cuba, getting into the Gulf, and then curving northward. And the CMC is a lot more conservative. It's a lot more conservative of a model if you're looking at between the CMC, GFS, and European models. So the CMC model is only showing the system getting down to around like 987 millibars into the mid to upper 980 millibar range, and then making landfall in the southeastern Louisiana, Mississippi coastline area, but still bringing lots of dangerous impacts and heavy rain, wind, and storm surge impacts to those areas as well. So also still showing a pretty dangerous outlook for Delta for those areas along the Gulf Coast. So again, that's what the GFS and CMC models are showing. Here's the European model, and as I move this forward in time, you'll be able to see Delta better. Actually, can I zoom this out more? Oh yeah, there. there we go. I want to zoom this out a little bit farther out so you can see it better. All right, now, so if you just look at the very bottom part of your screen, you can see there comes Delta, and you can see the European model, again, like the GFS, showing it becoming a very, very powerful system, getting into the 960s, and then the European model is showing Delta making landfall much farther to the west than what the GFS and CMC model is showing, but still showing it making landfall in southwestern Louisiana, and that would arguably be also pretty bad because that area also felt really bad impacts from Laura. That's pretty much exactly where Laura made landfall as a very strong Category 4 status, just short of being a Category 5 hurricane at 150 mile per hour peak, and just bringing tons of strong winds, intense winds, very heavy rain, and pretty damaging storm surge as well to some areas. Cameron, Louisiana was where Laura made landfall, and that area was just totally obliterated from how strong that system was. So this also is a pretty dire outlook for what this European model is showing for Delta. So that is really, really not promising. Yeah, that's what all three of those main models are showing for Delta. And again, I showed you what the intensity model guidance as of right now is showing for Delta, and what all of the general ensemble hurricane models are showing great agreement on where they think Delta will go. So that is very concerning as well. So again, this is a very, very concerning, dangerous system. It's looking like for the Gulf Coast, honestly. So please, everyone along the Gulf Coast, especially if you live in anywhere along the Louisiana coastline, Mississippi coastline, Alabama coastline, even the Florida Panhandle coastline, all of those people, especially in living along the Louisiana coastline, Mississippi, and Alabama coastline, please make sure you are as prepared as possible as you can be in these times. Of course, I know the coronavirus pandemic is going on, so it makes it a lot harder for you guys to be as prepared as you would be for these kinds of systems. But please make sure you are as prepared as you can be realistically for this system. So again, this is a very, very dangerous system. But looking at the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season Wikipedia page as a whole, again, we've had a very, very record-breaking, crazy hurricane season. Total of 26 depressions, total of 25 named storms. We are the second most active Atlantic hurricane season on record, right behind only the 2005 Atlantic hurricane season, which was 2005 Atlantic hurricane season was just unfathomably devastating. It was insane. Just the amount of destruction, devastation that season brought with it. It was heartbreaking, to just sum it up with one word. It was heartbreaking. We have had a total of 8 hurricanes so far this season, 2 major hurricanes. Likely going to see 9 hurricanes and 3 major hurricanes now with Delta, honestly. Total deaths, total fatalities so far this season, 144 total. Total damage so far this season is a little, somewhere around $24.225 billion in damage. So it's a pretty damaging season so far. I mean, nothing extraordinary that we should be surprised by. Of course, like, you know, comparing it to the 2005 season or 2017 season, both of those seasons were like the two most damaging seasons on record. So we're nowhere near that, of course, but still, it's been a decently damaging season for what we've seen with what the systems have been this season. The total ACE so far this season is at 103.18 units. So, you know, so far it's produced a decent amount of ACE. We're somewhat above average for ACE amounts up to this point, but definitely with the amount of named systems, total systems we've seen so far this season, we would have expected it to be way higher. You know, of course, much farther towards where 2005 might be, but of course, a bunch of these systems so far this season, especially in the beginning portions of the season, were very short-lived and weak. So that was a bit of a setback for the amount of ACE we could have seen up to this point. But again, we've gone through the entire list of pre-designated names and into the Greek alphabet. We are well into the Greek alphabet, and I want to point something out here. This is a really important thing that I want to point out. You can see we've gone through 4 names now of the Greek alphabet list, and the Wikipedia page for the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season has us going all the way through iota in the Greek alphabet here, adding on past zeta. So it's looking very likely that we passed 2005 in terms of name storms. We just need another 2 names. Again, by the way, only another 2 names this hurricane season to tie 2005, and then passed that will beat 2005 in terms of named storms. So it's been a truly crazy year. Tons of systems that have impacted land, been pretty damaging after because of that. But again, just truly crazy hurricane season so far. Delta, a truly dangerous system that we really need to monitor very closely, and I will continue to monitor the system and keep you guys very up to date with this system as we move throughout the rest of this week and up to the point of it making landfall along the Gulf Coast, because it will definitely make landfall along the Gulf Coast. Of course, we don't exactly know where it will make landfall, but as of right now, it seems pretty certain that it will make landfall along the southeastern Louisiana coastline, it seems, according to all of the hurricane models right now. But again, everyone that lives along the Gulf Coast should definitely be prepared for this system, especially if you live, between Houston and Pensacola, Florida. That area should be the most prepared, I would say, for Delta, definitely. So if everyone living between Houston and Pensacola, please make sure you are as prepared as you can be for the system. But of course, since the coronavirus pandemic is going on, it's much harder to prepare for these kinds of systems and hurricanes this year, tropical systems this year. But please make sure you are as prepared as you can realistically be for the system with everything that's going on right now. But again, hopefully you guys really enjoyed this video. Hopefully you really found it as informative and important as I think I really hoped I brought it across to you guys. But again, hopefully you found it very enjoyable, very informative. If you did, please consider liking the video, commenting on the video. If you are a first-time viewer and you like what you saw in today's video, I do tons of this kind of tropical content on my channel. So if you like that kind of content, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.